Josh McDaniels drops a gem in his presser today, and we're going to talk about it today on Night of the Shield. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Night of the Shield. I'm Jason Smith, a.k.a. The Knight, and thank you once again for tuning in to another episode. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button, the notification bell, so you can be updated every time I drop another episode, and go ahead and smack that like button. Let's continue to move up the algorithm. All right, I just want, sometimes your plans change and you got to switch things up on the fly. And, well, I've been doing this 53-man roster thing, and my whole plan today was to come on here and talk about the offensive line. But then all the stuff started coming out from practice today, and I've been watching the pressers and what have you. And as far as the players' presser goes, it was okay. I mean, some of that stuff is just so repetitive to me at this point in the game. And, I'm interested in what they say, and I love listening to it, but nothing really there to cover today, except for Josh McDaniels' presser. Now, he came out, and a shout out to Hondo Carpenter, and I believe it was Vic Tafer, who asked some amazing questions that puts things in a clearer perspective, things that we don't talk about. And if you guys have been around here for a while, you guys should know I'd love to do some deep dive on some things that normally ain't talked about, just because there's so many layers to this thing. There's so many layers that oftentimes we just overlook because we're so concerned about if the player's good enough, if the coaching's good enough, or what's happening with the football team, that we forget that there's a craft to this, man, and it's not easy. It's not easy. So today, it's 53 the hard way. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and play the first part. I believe it's like 5 or 6 minutes. I may, do my typical him and han or chiming in as Josh speaks. But I really want everybody to take the time and listen closely to what he says. There's nothing hidden. There's no secret there. But I don't know how many of you guys took note to what he said today. But we're going to do a deep dive on it. So let's go ahead and start off by playing the clip. Hold on here 1 second. Let me get this ready, and here we go.
Coach and general manager's mind of, boy, if we can't, this is a guy who may develop into something into the future. We probably can't cut him and get him on a practice squad. How much of that goes into just this year?
I would say a lot, because you're trying to think of what's best for the team now. You're also trying to think about what's best for the team as we go forward. Mm-hmm. You can't just do everything in a short-term window. And so we know that, there are some young players that are developing that ultimately they are not what they're going to be yet.
So good.
But you have to make an educated decision on whether or not you feel like, through continued work and effort from the player and the coaches, mm-hmm. That they're going to, that'll change for the better in certain ways, and ultimately impact the team. Obviously, some of that has to do with, the construction of the salary cap and, cost, et cetera. So
what a gem.
There's a lot of different things that go into it.
Mm-hmm.
Some are trying to figure out, how you can put together your best 69 or 70 players to work with, continuing to work with guys on the practice squad. So certain decisions, you try to do the best you can on those two. Nothing's ever a sure thing when you release a player and try to get him on the practice squad. But, that's basically what this next so many days is about, is trying to figure out how do we put the best group of guys together that we can continue to work with through the course of the season, develop, understanding that a number of those guys that start in the practice squad will eventually play for us, as they did last year. We saw a number of guys like that in that role eventually contribute in multiple ways on our team last year. So a lot that goes into it. It's not a simple thing.
Nope.
It's always a tough day on cut down day. There's feelings and all that kind of stuff involved. But this year in particular, as you're I'm sure, you're formulating thoughts on that and everything, but it feels like there's going to be some difficult cuts this year.
It's a good thing.
Good players that might not be able to make the 53-man roster.
Let's go.
You kind of get that feeling that this is going to be one of the more difficult ones.
I think it's always difficult. I don't know. There's a human side of that, regardless of who you release,
See, he's not
they've
spineless
done a
or
lot of
heartless.
work. They put a lot of effort, time, energy into competing and trying to do the best thing for the team and trying to improve themselves. So there's a tremendous amount of respect that's involved with all of our players, regardless of whether they make the roster, we put them on the practice squad, or ultimately they go somewhere else. You have a tremendous feeling for those guys because of all that they've done to try to help you and your team be better. So I don't really think it would be unfair for me to sit here and say this year's decisions will be harder than last year's, because I kind of look at them all. They're all not fun to go through at the end of the day, because, like I said, there's a human element to it. The goal for us will be always to try to make every one of them difficult, because we've added competition, in every room at every spot.
Depth.
And so I hope we want to keep 80 guys, you know what I mean, and not there's 47 that we like and we're trying to figure out who the other 6 are. I don't think we're going to be in that boat. I think there's going to be a number of players we would love to keep. As I mentioned, that's kind of where it goes into the 53 plus, 16, 17 extra guys, where you're saying, how can we construct this thing so where we have the best group of players going forward?
How much does it change with
Man, I've heard that said probably year after year, right? Someone usually always asks the question, how hard is it going to be to, tell certain people they don't make the team, or whatever they want to say, right? And I mean, we're kind of doing that. We started that process, and it's kind of ironic because I'm struggling picking who I think, not Josh or Champ or Dave, what they think, what I think our offensive line should look like. And it's very difficult because there's certain things that you like about one player that you may not like about another, but then you got to think practicality, you got to think versatility, can they play other positions? All that stuff comes into play, right? And I can't wait for this Champ and Dave presser. I think that ought to be interesting too. I'll probably be covering that if it's as good as what Josh just dropped us here. But, I think that we take for granted, especially from a fan perspective, even from a reporter perspective, even if you're reporting on this football team and you're not a fan, I even think you could fall into the same trap of not really taking into consideration that it's not so easy as X's and O's. It's not. Or measurables. We already know that, right? We're looking at Drake Thomas right now going, he doesn't have the measurables, but man, that guy just seems to be in the right place and plays hard and it's fast and he's just there. And you worry about his durability, but damn, that guy can play. So at what point, do you start to shift things, okay? The other thing I don't hear a lot about, only during free agency or when we have a player that's already proved himself, do we really want to sit down and talk about the financials? And oftentimes I hear a lot of people that cover the draft and they'll cover free agency and they'll start talking contracts. And during those processes, I do hear them kind of mention the cap that we got this year. But they often don't think about how that contract's going to affect us 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. Even some of these rookie contracts. So when they're looking at this roster, they're not just building for the year. They're trying to sustain it for multiple years. And this is where I'm going to probably get some of you a little testy with me right now, okay? Because I keep hearing the terminology, the Patriot West or the Las Vegas Patriots. I've heard it all already. And here's the thing. Over the course of the past 20 plus years, the only team that's ever figured out the salary cap stuff and has done it in a way where they've been contenders or really competitive year in and year out has been the New England Patriots. Somewhere where and it's very rare too that anybody came out of that organization as a team, right? So you have both Josh and Dave coming at it together. They spent some time there. So they learned a lot of concepts. They learned a lot of not just how to evaluate players, but contract structure, thinking ahead. And trust me, I know a lot of the things that they're thinking and doing are their own thoughts. This is not Bill Belichick's cronies that are just over here trying to build the Bill Belichick system. But they did learn a lot, and that's what you're supposed to do. There wouldn't be a Bill Belichick if there wasn't a Bill Parcells. All right? That's just the way that this thing works. So as we sit here and we judge Josh, or we judge Dave, or we judge Champ, don't really hear his name often, but he's a part of that equation. There's so many decisions that are in picking your 53, or as Josh was saying, 69, he's referring to the practice squad, and how you're not even guaranteed. So you have to sit there and say, well, this guy, because I hear the word, I heard it thrown around today even. Oh, this guy's on the bubble. This guy's on the bubble. This guy's on the bubble. Well, if you don't make the right decision, you pop that bubble and you lose both of them. So you make the wrong decision one, you might not get the other one back. So you really have to be careful on how you make these decisions, both from a player personnel perspective as well as a contractual perspective as it pertains to your salary cap moving forward and your ability to build teams year in and year out. You heard a lot of us already talk about the $33 million in dead cap. That hurts you. I've heard a lot of it come up just recently because of the Josh Jacobs situation and the $10 million. People are still out there saying release the guy and just take the $10 million. Where are you going to spend it? Where are you going to spend it right now? We've shown great growth and great depth on this football team. There's no reason for us just to get rid of a guy like Josh Jacobs, which we don't have to do contractually right now. We seem to have a good team. I like our running backs as they stand as a committee. Maybe not one-on-one am I super excited about one back by themselves, but as a committee, I'm cool with it. Hold on to Jacobs. Try to work it out. Maybe, just maybe, even the Raiders' whole plan is, look, we don't, after giving Josh the ball 393 times, do we really expect Josh to come in here and we're going to pound and rock him around like we did last year? They wouldn't have played him that much anyway. They already know what they got in Josh. They really don't care if he's here right now. I really believe that. Now, I do believe they want him in sooner rather than later at this point in time so they can get him acclimated to the team, acclimated to the system, maybe a few changes, getting used to Jimmy, getting used to certain things so they could implement him right away. But once the smoke clears with this 53-man roster, then they'll actually see even what's on the books that they could even offer this year that makes sense. What can they use to entice him to come back this year? How could they sweeten the pot, right? Until they settle this 53-man roster and truly know what the salary cap money is going to be on this football team. Well, we just have to write it out. There might be some extra dollars, some hidden dollars in there that we don't see. As far as the emotional tie to players, I love to hear it only because Josh got a lot of crap last year, like he doesn't care about the players, and I don't believe that. He's got a tough job. It's funny, on one side of the fence, we're going to sit here and say, dang, Josh, why'd you keep that guy? He sucks, whatever. And the other side is, man, you got rid of him because this is not easy, and there's a reason why building a dynasty is so hard. And the only football team, again, I'm going to reiterate this again because I think it's important, the only team that's been able to do it in the salary cap era, there's actually been a couple of teams, but one's done it better than the other, the New England Patriots and the Baltimore Ravens. They have done really well over there too. Okay, as far as being competitive. They don't win a lot. They only won one, but at the end of the day, they always got some good players and personnel on the field. They got good coaching. They always seem to be a contender or thrown in someone's side at least. And I guarantee you, as a Raider fan that's been dealing with this mediocrity for 20 plus years, I'm ready for it. It's one of the reasons why, because this is how important a tandem is in being on the same page. GMs, coaches, your scouting department, even your assistant coaches and your position coaches and all that, trying to get on a cohesive same page and an understanding, because it's very hard. I was excited we brought Gruden back. I think Gruden put too much on his plate. Okay, Gruden tried to be the guy, and he brought a talent evaluator in, but tried to be the guy through that guy. And I really think, even though you're hearing reports that, no, that was my pick, or John, I guarantee you John didn't let him do that. Some of those were John picks. Kind of reminded me of Al picks. And those of you who've been around for a while, when R.I.P. the GOAT, Al Davis, when Al passed away and they brought in Reggie McKenzie, I remember one of Reggie's first pressers, he talked about there was nothing there. There's no scouting department. There's no offices. There's no conference rooms. Al did things the Al way. That's what made him so great. That's what makes him like the godfather of the Raider Nation and how he built and ran his franchise. It's also the same reason why he struggled at the end, because he had no support system in place. Reggie had to come in and build that support system. And he never got to see that through because he had Dennis Allen, and now you see Dennis Allen doing his thing in New Orleans with John Gruden, which is pretty ironic. But after he was gone, Mark started forcing things on him. Okay? So Jack Del Rio was a Mark thing. John Gruden was a Mark thing. This is why I even said I think it was yesterday or the day before, I was talking about, someone reporting that Mark should act more like Jerry Jones and make the shot caller on that. No. It does start with Mark Davis. Mark Davis needs to surround himself around other smart individuals that can help him make logical, reasonable decisions. And I do believe, even at this point in time, they did that by bringing this tandem over. Now, that doesn't mean that he did such a good job that this is guaranteed to work. It just means that it makes sense to me. I know why they made that decision. I know why those two gentlemen are here. And even though it's just preseason in the second year, you're starting to see the pattern of why that could be something worth talking about later. They still got to go out and prove it, but it starts. It's 53 the hard way. You got to pick not only 53 players, you have to pick the right 53 players that not only make you competitive this year, but gives you the next step ahead next year and the year after that, and so on and so forth. Putting the right people on the practice squad that will be safe, or because you're going to lose some. We tend to lose 1 to 2 every year. And you're trying to make sure that you put the right ones there so when they come back after a year of being on the practice squad and you're working on developing them, that they make that jump that we always talk about that provides them more depth as they bring in the new free agency class, undrafted free agents, and the draft picks. There's so many layers to this thing. Like it's not easy just to say, hey, pay Josh 15 million. This is ridiculous. He's worth it. Just give him the 15 million. Give him the 15 million for 5 years guaranteed. Josh is worth it. And whether or not as fans or reporters or whoever you are, even if you feel like Josh is that dog, which we all know Josh is a dog, it has to make A, financial sense, and B, it has to make player personnel sense. And history will tell you that running backs that get run a lot and get beat up a lot, they get hit, their window's shorter than most other players on the football team. You're not going to do it. This regime is not going to put themselves in a hole, and it doesn't mean they don't respect Josh or they don't like Josh. They're working together. They have a plan. They see it, and they're going to execute it. I can't even explain to you how excited I am to hear what Champ and Dave have to say, because I've heard coaches come on and try to say, it's your typical, cookie cutter comments that we always get with these pressers. But every once in a while, you'll catch somebody at a vulnerable moment, and I think we caught Josh a little bit. I mean, some of it was cookie cutter, don't get me wrong, but he really talked about how hard it is to see a player's potential. A lot like Drake Thomas was a good example that I brought up, right? Undersized, but a dog. And now you're trying to should we go with what the analytics and the history tell us about he's not got the measurables? Because, I know Brian Urlacher was small too, right? But that guy's a Hall of Famer. So at the end of the day, and I'm not saying Drake Thomas is Brian Urlacher is going to be a Hall of Famer. I'm just saying these are some of the decisions that you have to make. Sometimes things happen, like Butler getting injured and now he's out. Now that might make it easier for you to say, hey, all right, I think that's worth a shot now. We don't have to make that decision whether or not we keep one or the other. There's still a decision, in my opinion, to be made there, and we'll cover that as we do linebackers. My whole, hey, I'll take it one day at a time thing might end up being a bum rush by the end of all this of me putting my 53-man roster together. But at the end of the day, it was just so ironic because I was looking at the offensive line and I'm just scratching my head, I don't know what I want to do here. I do know I want to keep about 8, but what 8? Like my starting 5 is not hard. It's the depth. Because there's a couple of players on our offensive line, that's going to be tough decisions. They're not exactly ready, but they showed enough to where someone might swoop them in because they might not be good enough for us right now, but they might be good enough for somebody else. So these are the decisions that they have to sit there and scratch their head. And then if they're lucky enough and they get these players on the practice squad, out of the 16, 17 players, you get to pick 4 that you can protect, and you got to make that right call too. You got to make sure you're protecting the 4 that you truly want to develop. And that's a process in itself, right? What are some of our biggest needs? What should we be focusing on? Do we believe these guys have what it takes to develop them properly? I'm going into my night dwell ramble, dude, and I'll cut myself off for everybody just to spare you my ramble. But this is how I've always been on this channel, man. My mind constantly wants to dig deeper. When they come out on a presser and they say, hey, this is what I got going on, I know that there's truth to it, but you got to find the gems and look behind it to really find the answer. Now, in a presser like that, he's not giving you the answer to what his 53-man roster is going to be, but what he's telling you is we have a good football team. He believes in this football team. He believes that, man, I don't know if he expected it. I know that's always the goal, and you want to believe in everything that you do. But I think all 3 of those guys, Josh, Dave, and Champ, are sitting back going, wow, good job. Good job. Now, the real work has to come in. Not only do you have to pick the right 53 and then the right 16 for your practice squad and then the 4 you're going to keep and making all these decisions, you got to make sure that the ones you pick are going to truly fit your culture, what you're trying to project for this football team. Take your coaching and go be impactful week in and week out. Week in and week out. That's why everybody's goal at this time of year is Super Bowl. Now, a lot of these guys understand once that first quarter starts to play out and you start heading into the second quarter of the season, you'll kind of know these coaches ain't dumb. They're going to fight. Nobody, I mean, there's been teams that have been, and I know a lot of people thought we were doing that last year. No, we weren't. We weren't throwing in the towel, and we're not going to do it this year for a quarterback. You'll know, because you never know exactly when you come out of training camp and you're coming into the regular season. You don't know if you found lightning in the bottle, and you might have a team that just, boom. That part sometimes comes in, and you're unexpectedly like, wow, okay, we got something going on here. Let's go. Let's go. And that's the optimism we're feeling right now. We feel like, hey, we're going to be a lot better than a lot of people think. I think we're better than a 7-win team. Hell, I think we're better than a 9-win team. There's an opportunity there. And that's optimism driving your opinion and driving your focus, thinking that's better than it is. And that reality will hit you, going into that second quarter. You might go, oh, it happened to us last year real quick, didn't it? And we still fought. And we still won games. We just couldn't close anything out. This is a hard gig. It's not so easy. There's some teams that make it look easy. Look at Love. Chad Love? Why am I saying Chad Love? It's not Chad Love. Anyway, the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. Hello? Like that guy's been backing up who? Aaron Rodgers? Dang. What happened there? Oh, wait, Aaron Rodgers was the back. That's not easy, man. Like 3 in a row? If Love comes out there and really slings a rock, is it really going to be 3 in a row that Green Bay gets their quarterback? And they still only got 1 Super Bowl for it. 2 if you count Brett's, right? It's not easy. Even finding that right quarterback is not going to translate into Super Bowl wins. You got to pick the right 53, build a culture, stay true, never change, and just find that code and learn how to do it. I hope we're on the way to at least being competitive, because it's time for us to implement ourselves back into one of the best teams in the National Football League. And I'm not looking forward. I'm not saying it needs to be this year. But within the next few years, I want us to be not just a playoff projected football team. I want us to be an AFC championship, Super Bowl caliber football team because we deserve it. There ain't nobody more passionate than the Raiders. The Raider fans, hell, even the beat reporters that say they're not fans that cover the football team, they can't help themselves but to fall in love with what it means to be a part of the Raider Nation. It's amazing. It's fun. I miss the good old days, man. You know, Gruden's first run, all the playoff games I got to watch, everything I got to experience, Timmy Brown and his accolades, kicking, taking punt returns back, getting his catches, just the Monday night games, the AFC Championship games, just those were some amazing times that me and my brother share, me and my buddy Eddie. I know Eddie, I haven't talked to Eddie in years. I don't even think he's, watched this channel. I don't think he knows I do this. But those were the years, all the way up to 2003, man. Had season tickets from 95 all the way through. Just to watch it do it and dwindle away, that feeling. I miss that feeling. I want it back. So when I hear stuff like that, it's like, yeah, I get it. I get it. It's hard. But it's time to get it right. I'll leave it at that. 53 the hard way. All right, guys. Once again, thank you for being here. Thanks for letting me ramble tonight. Hit that subscribe button, that notification bell, and hit that like button so we continue to move up the algorithm. And until next time, stay Raider strong. Night out.